Welcome to the Restoration Ninja Profits Podcast, highlighting the unsung heroes of the restoration industry. Tune in today for success stories and insider tips. Now, here's your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So tell me, we have Beate here. Welcome.
I'm so glad I'm here. Thank you for having me, Lorraine.
Tell me a little bit about your business and what you do.
Yes. So my name is Beate Chelette. I'm known as the growth architect, and I help a lot of visionaries and thought leaders to land their plane. And what that means is a lot of people have ideas and they circle at 30,000 feet, and then they don't have exactly a plan on where to land first and then where to go after that and after that. So I develop strategies and systems and processes that help you to get there. And I also work on a spiritual level where we talk about, it's great to have external blocks removed, but what about some of your internal blocks? And I believe that the most successful business owners are ones that have spiritual practices, whatever that might mean for you, and really pay attention to living a balanced life.
Yeah, I know you talk a lot about strategy. What would you say is your favorite strategy or the best strategy out there?
So the strategy really follows the business model. So when I answer that question, the first thing I want to do is take a look at the business. Like, where do you want to go? And if you talk to business owners a lot of time, Lorraine, they are in this arena where they feel that they have to follow a model that somebody else does. They don't know that there's many different versions of a business model. So I'm going to give you an example. So if somebody says, well, I've heard that I need to learn how to speak to be in front of people so I can generate a lot of leads from my business. That is right. That is one strategy you can use to build your business. But if you are breaking out in hives and you are paranoid or freaked out about public speaking, then why not use podcast guesting or podcast hosting as a strategy to get your message in front out of different people? So the business model follows what you want. And then once we understand what that is, then we can develop the main strategy that's going to get you there the fastest. So my favorite strategy is the strategy that's going to follow your business model and can get you there.
I like that because then there's no cookie cutter approach. And, it's true. You really can't base your business on someone else's, because what somebody is really good at and you may not be good at. So it's like, why would you do that in the first place? So it totally makes sense. One thing I wanted to say is that you call yourself the growth architect. Where did you get that from?
So the idea of being a growth architect comes from, so I'm originally from Germany, and it is in my DNA to engineer things. I guess, that bias or that idea is true. But I look at this and I always think about how can I make these concepts of architecting growth, scaling processes, how can I make this clear to people so they don't run away and say, oh God, somebody terrorizing me with terrible terms. Can we just talk about creativity and creation? And then I thought, if you're building a house, you need a blueprint. So the contractor, the architect, they say, well, where do you want to live? So you have to make a decision. Then how big of a house do you want? How many people need to live in there? Do you want a large master bedroom? Do you want one with a tub? Do you want one with a shower? Do you want one with a steam? So you have to make a lot of decisions as you're architecting how you want to live. And even if you move into an existing house or into an existing home, there's always the question, is this big enough for us? Where does everything go? How do we organize it? How do we set this up so that's a place that I want to live in? In business, Lorraine, follows the exact same idea. Is how do you want to work? How do you want to service your clients? How does this look like for you? So when we architect growth, I think about a blueprint for a house that is built to fit what you want.
Now, how, you have it, you call it the 5-star success blueprint. Is that correct?
Yes. So the 5-star success blueprint is a methodology that we developed because business building is not difficult. It's easy if you know what the steps are in order. And in the 5-Star Success Blueprint, we have these 5 steps, pardon me, very clearly outlined. So the first step of the 5-Star Success Blueprint is, what is the idea? Why are you the one who is the right person to bring this idea to market? Who is your ideal client? Why would they want to buy this? What is the problem that they're having? And what is the solution that you and only you can offer? Then you go to the second, which is the offer. Now you look at, what is the offer that I have to create to satisfy what I just found out in the first step? So if I know what their problem is, what needs to be solved, why I can solve it, now I can create an offer that is directly targeted toward that one thing. Then you move to the third part, which is the system. Because once you know what the offer is, now you know what systems you need to build to generate the leads, to get the people in, to deliver the offer, to service the clients whose problems you can solve. Then you go to the fourth step, which is the team. Because then you know what team you need to hire. And I think that's kind of where you are at. We were just talking in the green room, right? So now you need to figure out, who do you need to hire to manage your systems, that handle the offer, that solves the problem for your clients. And then ultimately that gets us to the fifth part of the 5-Star Success Blueprint, and that is you as a leader. Because then we look at, who do you need to be to lead that team that manages that system, that brings that offer to solve problems for your clients.
I love that. And it's so funny. In the beginning, you mentioned in the first part of your blueprint was, you're knowing who your ideal client is. And I laugh all the time because, I do digital marketing, and it's really important for me to know who I'm going to be targeting and who I'm going after when I'm working with a client. And you wouldn't believe how many people don't know that. And they've been in business for, some of these people have been in business for a very, very long time. And it always just shocks me. And it's like any program I've ever been a part of, or any coach I've ever worked with, or any speaker that I've ever heard, they always talk about that ideal client. So I know that you can't really go through business life 10 years or more without at least hearing about who is your ideal client, or your avatar, or whatever you want to call, or your tribe, whatever you want to call them. So I find it interesting that every single person that I've ever spoken to always says you have to know who your ideal client is.
And it's not just you need to know who your ideal client is. You also need to crawl into their minds. We created a very inexpensive program. It's $7. It's called the Airtight Avatar. You find it at airtightavatar.com in case, or in the shocking event that any of your listeners has not done this yet. And it's not just about saying, my ideal client is 35 years old, but it's also about understanding the psychology, because you do business with people and you need to crawl into their heads. There is a difference on selling to a stressed out single mother of 2 who's 37 versus a brand new out of college 26-year-old male. You cannot have the same language or social media, outreach that's identical for these two people. They have completely different mindsets, completely different needs. And we see people all the time, and what you just said, Lauren, confirms that you do too, that people say, well, anybody really could buy my product. Really? Really? Do you see when you see a Coke ad, a Coca-Cola ad, do you see 90-year-old people drinking Coca-Cola? Do you see children drinking Coca-Cola? Who do you see? You see young, hip people that are social. That's their target audience. People that want a caffeine high and some sugar without whatever drinking coffee or, it's like a party drink and a mixed drink. That's who they're going after. But yes, everybody could drink Coca-Cola, and a lot of people do drink Coca-Cola, but the target audience is not everyone. The target audience is a specific avatar, even for Coca-Cola.
Yeah, absolutely. I once was doing an ad for a musician who was having a gig in a local area, and it's like he did his first ad, like, I don't know, for a couple gigs ago, and literally I'm like seeing the age range, 18 to 65, and I'm like thinking, oh no, 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 no. First of all, 18-year-olds can't go to your gig because they can't get into the bars here. So it's like, that's not going to work. So why would you target them? And then the second one is like, why would you target a 65-year-old when they're like in their pajamas ready to go to bed? They're not going to come out to a 9 o'clock gig. So it's just kind of funny. I laugh about that. You talk a lot about, you mentioned in the beginning of the call, you talked about spirituality. And, I find that to be very important because it helps me be who I am in my business. So let's talk a little bit about that. A lot of people have trouble gelling their business with their faith, or, however that looks.
Whatever they want to call it. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you help with that?
Yes. So I think it's an important topic to have a conversation about, because I'm around a lot of very, very wealthy people, very, very successful people. But at that level, a lot of people refer to it as it's just money. So if you have a monetary challenge, you may be able to solve the monetary challenge, but that doesn't take care of anything else. Broke people always think if you only had money, everything would be magically falling into place, which is an illusion. Because money comes with other problems. But they're good problems, don't get me wrong. But we have to look at this from a perspective of when you go to a cemetery, when you look at the tombstones, what does it not say? It does not say, here lies a very rich lone wolf. Mary crushed internet marketing her entire life. None of this. What it says, here lies a man, woman, father, son, daughter. Here is someone who connected with other people. So when we go into business, we need to remember at all times that we are here in this human experiment on this planet because we are social and we are interacting with other people and we are community people. We know the data that when people are lonely and alone, that their health is bad, that their mental health is not as good, that people that are around thriving communities tend to do better. So now I want you to think about this from the perspective when you run your business. Is it really that you have the sense that you're going to get there wherever there is, and then what? So you're going to risk your relationship with your partner, with your children, with your community. Your family's in the way of you working more so you can achieve a financial goal, and then everything is gone because nobody wants to be around you because you're so intolerable to be with. Or is it not designed for you to say, I want to feel a connection to other people. I'm doing this for myself and to create a lifestyle so I can enjoy. But we have a tendency to postpone the enjoy until we hit a certain point, and by that certain point, we already blew up everything that was meaningful to us. And so that's why I think spirituality, Lorraine, right? And I want to hear what you have to say about this. That's why spirituality, I think, is an important part. And, call it believe or one source or God. I mean, I don't care on whether it's a church or it's you meditating or just breathing or going for walks or cycling, which could be a meditation in its own way. But unless you have a connection to something, it's hard to have purpose in life. So I want to, you had an immediate reaction, Lorraine. I want to hear what came up for you.
Yeah, no, you hit it right on the mark because, I feel that there's so many people out there, and sometimes even including myself, because, I'm very intense about my business, but I know to walk away. That's something me and my husband have always been really good at. We've always been entrepreneurs, and we know when to walk away. So, like for him, when he came home from work, he left work at work. And, but I was thinking about the whole thing is like nobody, it's true. Nobody at your funeral is going to say, "Oh my gosh, she worked so hard." Nobody's going to say that.
Yeah, her conversion rate, Lorraine's conversion rate was amazing. My favorite story of Lorraine and me is when we were having this conversation about click-through rates. And Lorraine told me she was improving her click-through rate by 2%. And that was that story is not told anywhere.
No. And I've, because I'm so involved, I used to work for a church. So very involved, on a lot of levels, and attended so many funerals, and literally I've never heard anybody say anything about that. And it's true. You mentioned something else. We're very social, and that's what you hear about. Those are the stories you hear. There was this, I could give a great example of this. There was this lovely, wonderful elderly gentleman who had passed away, and in his retirement, and I think he worked in finance, and he used to give out these little cards. And it was like hug cards. And it was just so, I never had anybody do that. Like nobody's ever given me a hug card. And you know what? It made me smile. It really did. And I think that sometimes people do have to lighten up a little bit when it comes to their work, and be very balanced. And hopefully there's something in their life that they go towards, or maybe even like a lot of people have passions about, things that they can volunteer for and do. And I think that really helps you stay balanced. But really, it's all about people. That's why I named, my business Biz Gone Social. And that's why I have the little coffee cup. It's very important to be able to, bottom line is I'm an extrovert anyway. So it would be very hard for me to sit in a cubicle all day.
Yeah, you made some very good points here. And and I want to point out that spirituality that we talk about is not the spirituality where it's mandatory. You go to church twice a week and you pray the rosary or whatever that is. If that's what you want to do, by all means do that. But it is about connection. It's about connection to a source. Because if you really look at it, the laws of nature, the laws of spirituality, the laws of science, they're all connected. It's all the same thing. And people that really, really study these types of laws, understand that. And we just have a tendency, especially as we do better, to poo-poo that and to say, well, come on, all this woo-woo stuff. But interesting enough, most people that are very successful have a spiritual practice. Yeah. And they do meditate, and they do breathe, and they control their mindset. And they are very deliberate about what they're putting into their brains and what they're not allowing to be part of their brain. And if that works for people that are really successful, maybe we should emulate them.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard of the show Shark Tank.
Yes.
It's very popular. A couple of weeks ago, somebody was selling some kind of, or, putting in front of them some kind of like special oil or something it was, or body something, and was talking about the practice of meditation and stuff. And I forget which shark it was. It's going to drive me crazy now, but one of them said that they practice. They have a daily routine. It's one of the newer sharks. It's not one of the ones that have been there all the time. And maybe they do. I don't know. But I just recall them saying that they have a practice, that they do meditate. So I think that's really fascinating. So let's talk a little bit about, I read a few questions that you had, and one that intrigued me a little bit is you sold your business to Bill Gates in a recession. How did you do that? I got to know.
Yeah. So, well, basically the story, to drill it down, is a story of somebody that left Germany. So I'm an immigrant. I came to the United States in my early 20s, and I had always loved creativity and, and things that were, forgive me, not the post office kind of stuff, right? always challenged the status quo in the sense of when somebody says, well, that's how it's done. I'm like, why? Doesn't make any sense. And I was a photographer and became a photo editor because I was better at the business side of things. I realized that very early on. And then I moved to the United States, started a photography representation business, a production business for still photography, worked with clients like Wrangler, Levi Strauss, really, really great clients. And then I went through what I call the decade of bad luck, where over 10 years, I really was dealing with massive, massive setbacks, fires, floods, riots, an earthquake, September 11th that wiped out $500,000 business in a day, a lawsuit that I was involved in for an entire year that cost me another $500,000, and just couldn't get myself ahead of the game. And then once the lawsuit settled, and it settled, for just enough money to pay off my debt, I had to start all over again. And I had this idea for a stock photography syndication business for architecture and interior images. And I built this business, but I had no money. So I got back into debt. So I was $135,000 in debt. I could not figure out how I was going to get out of it. I go to Germany. I meet my dad, have some meetings to drum up some business. My father has a stroke. My father didn't have a stroke, Lorraine. My father had pancreatic cancer, and he died 6 weeks later. At the funeral in Germany, my phone rings, and it's my office in Los Angeles. We've been served a notice. Now we're losing the house. And I'm standing there, and I, fell to my knees, and I raised my fist at God, and I said, if you have a plan, this would be a very, very good time to fill me in, because I just couldn't. At this point, so much has happened over such a long period of time. I was exhausted. I was like, I surrender. I surrender. Whatever happens now has to happen the way it has to happen, because I literally have done everything. I've made every phone call. I've sent every email. I've done what I could. I wrote the business plan. If it's not meant to be, it's not that didn't do it. I did everything. And I let it, and I surrendered, and I let it go. And I got back, and I was like looking at bankruptcy attorney. And then I get a letter from the White House. Now, I had written in my absolute desperation a letter to the President of the United States, George W. Bush, back in the days. And I did that because my former mother-in-law was a nag. Why don't you write a letter to the president? Why don't you go after the number one person in the country? Why are you wasting your time with anybody else? Why don't you just go ahead and write a letter? Have you written your letter to the president yet? Did you write your letter? And it was so obnoxious, Lorraine. At some point, I just said, I'm going to write the damn letter, so we don't have this conversation. Imagine my surprise when I get a letter from the White House. Now, this letter put me in touch with a Small Business Administration, who also got a letter from the White House, who then called me because he wanted to know which nutcase would write a letter to the president instead of picking up the phone and calling him directly. And so I get this appointment, but I had written my business plan. I was fully prepared for this meeting because I had done all the work. And 3 months later, they found me a bank that was going to take my $135,000 in debt, restructure it in a 10-year fixed loan, free up my line of credit, get me to break even 3 months later. So between bankruptcy and break even was 3 months. 18 months later, I'm the world leader in my category. That's when the Bill Gates company comes and says, show us how you did it. And I said, absolutely not. You want it, you buy it. And they said, how much? I said, $2 million. And they said, okay.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And maybe I need to write a letter to the president. No, I'm just teasing.
You will not believe how many people, since they've heard my story, have written letters to the president of the United States. I'm pretty sure not every president is responsive.
I would have thought small businesses, but yeah, I mean, it's more prevalent now. Like you hear about it more, especially as a woman, than you did probably back in the day when you were struggling. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I think it's fascinating. And you know what? And who knows, there might have been a little God in there too. Like when you're like, you know what I'm saying? You never know.
That was the thing I remember when, after my father passed away, and I've been making for many, many, many years a donation to a Catholic charity, the Good Shepherd Shelter here, which is a phenomenal organization in Los Angeles. And when I went there and I gave him my donation that year, the convent leader, Sister Ann said to me, "You do know that your dad can do a lot more for you now where he's at than he was able to do for you while he was here." And that always, always stuck with me. So yeah, maybe he had a word with God himself.
You never know. Sometimes the answer is right in front of us too, and we don't know. It's like that one letter had a whole series of events that followed. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, how crazy is that? But that, again, is the spirituality that we were talking about earlier. Because the part of the surrender or the spirituality that we are talking about in this show is about you not judging. Because it is an idiotic idea to write a letter to the president and think that they can help you with your business. But then, is it? Look what happened. So, did the president actually help? Yes and no. It depends on how you look at the story, but look at the outcome. So, in essence, yes. Which would have never happened, the series of events. So it happened the way it had to happen. But that's where we get in our own way, where we become unbelievably judgmental and say, who does that? And I could have written that letter 6 months prior to that. That's how long this was going on.
Yeah. Anyways, but we're at the end of the show almost. But what I wanted to ask is, there's a lot of people listening to this. They're probably a lot of seasoned entrepreneurs. There are some that are thinking of starting their own business. There are some that are struggling in their business. There are some that, are doing okay. What is one universal piece of advice that you could offer to my audience?
Yeah, I think that probably the most important thing that I'm seeing right now is that you got to be very, very clear which of the 3 phases your business is in. There is a building phase when you build the business model, when you build the pipeline, when you build all these things. When you're building, you need to focus on the building part, not the growing and not the scaling. The building part. Then you move into the growing part, the growth. That's when you take care of the lead generation, the conversions, the clients, the social media, the how do you show up, the branding, the marketing, sales. Once that's figured out, you move to scaling. Then you make yourself obsolete. Do not try to make yourself obsolete when you're in the building phase. That's preposterous. Do not try to scale when you're in the growth phase. So people read all these things. They go to internet marketers. They get all confused about what comes what and when. Yeah, but if Brandon Burchard, if Russell Brunson, if, any Ryan Dies, Ryan Leveresk, if any of these big internet marketers is saying it must be true. Yes, it is at the right time. At the right moment, if your business is at that stage. So you look at this from a very, very, very clear perspective. And you may have been in scaling, and now with what's going on in the market, you might be back at building because what you've done doesn't work anymore. So stop trying to scale, go back to building, build the business model until it works so you can grow it, and then you go back to scaling. These are circles in business. So that would be my most important advice. Do not be blindsided by so-called persuasive internet marketing language that is solely designed to catch you at your most vulnerable point, your insecurity.
I love that. And it's so true. I've seen it so many times. I've done a couple big coaching programs, and there's a few people that I keep on running into, and I kind of took a break from some coaching programs for a while, and literally I had went back and I joined this one program, and this person's still stuck on building their website. I'm like, you gotta just build it. It's not going to be perfect. I mean, it's like this perfection marketing or whatever that, it's like you could grow your business without a website. I did. I mean, so it's like, seriously, I do a lot of networking. That's what's
Pick up the phone. It's called pick up the freaking phone. Make the call. Connect with people. Don't try to sell. Let them see who you are. Have real conversations. Be honest. If, I always say to my my prospects, Lorraine, I said, my job is to get you to the intersection. And at the intersection, there's a yes or a no. There's no maybe and there's no later button. There's only a yes or a no button. I don't care which button you press, as long as it's one of those two. Because then you're making an informed decision on what you need to move forward in your life. But most people get to this intersection and they say, it's a definite maybe. So they're avoiding making the decision. That is the decision. It is the decision you choose to remain exactly where you are at. Because if we go back to the spiritual principles we talked about earlier, imagine an oak tree. And so the oak tree says, you know what, this is all BS. This is all too stressful, what other trees are doing. Ridiculous amount of work. I am going to do it differently. I'm going to only roll out 100 leaves. And if people are stopping, admiring my leaves, the birds are coming, the squirrels are hanging out, and people respond positively to the 100 leaves I put out, I'm going to do a slow rollout over the next couple months with the remaining leaves. Says no tree ever. It is either spring or summer or fall or winter. There are no other choices. So what makes you think that you can defy these laws by saying, wait and see is an actual action? It is not an action. And it will bite you in the butt every single time. It is better to say, I looked at it, I decided against it at this time because I made a decision it's not right for me. That is a decision, not some wishy-washy stuff. But that's a tangent I'm on all the time. So off the soapbox I'll go.
No, but it's good. And it's so true. It really is. It's so true. Well, I want to thank you. You've been an awesome guest. I mean, I know that there's someone out there that resonated with you. And if so, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah. So, again, we talked about the airtight avatar. So you find that at airtightavatar.com. In the event gasp, Lorraine and I, we have a joint gasp on that you haven't done that yet. So you may need to go and do that. And if you heard something and you want to figure out what your earning potential is in this market, I've actually created a quiz called What's Your Talent Worth? You go to whatsyourtalentworth.com. It's free and it's an actual mathematical calculation. It will calculate what your earning potential is in this environment right now. And then when you get the result, I want you to look at that number you're making and the number you could be making. And then you need to give me a call and we need to talk about that in an uncovery session.
Awesome. I will definitely take the test. I love taking little tests. Okay.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to see what your number is, Lorraine.
Who knows? Because I'm rebranding now, so it will be interesting. Okay, so thank you so much again, and to everyone out there. Hope you enjoyed the show today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us today on the Restoration Ninja Profits Podcast. Armed with today's insights, you're set to elevate your restoration company. Be sure to subscribe to stay ahead. And don't forget to rate and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. We'll catch you again in the next episode of the Restoration Ninja Profits Podcast.